3:30. Arts, 3 employees, 308,000. Board of Nursing, 27 employees, 3.4 million. Board of Pharmacy, 3.8 million, 18.75 employees. I'm not sure how they divide that out, but Children and Families, 2,657 employees, 988 million. Department of Aging and Disability is 3.2 billion and 330 employees. That's all funds too. That's fed and state. Kansas KNI, Kansas Neurological Institute, the hospital here in Topeka, 437 employees. The budget's about 28 million. Larner State Hospital, 920 employees. The budget's 71 million. Osawatomie State Hospital, $52 million budget, 538 employees. Parsons State Training Hospital. Oh, I didn't print off the deal. I think it's about 60 million if I remember right, but I guess I didn't print that page off. Commissioner of Veterans Affairs, 25 million, 375 employees. They run the state hospitals, the one at Dodge City and the one at Winfield, and then the cemeteries and all that. Kansas Guardianship Program, 10 employees, and about $1.3 million. And then KDHE, Kansas Department of Health and Environment, it's $4,181,000,000 and 1,724 employees. So I should have done that yesterday, but anyway, just to give folks an idea of what we're going to run through this committee here over the next period of time. So with that, Megan, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great.
All right, you're up.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I am going to go over a few of the items that you received, I believe, via email, but that have to do with the budget. The purpose of it is just to give you a brief overview of the general budget process, not necessarily the individual budgets, but just the process throughout the year that the legislature follows. And I'm going to point out some of the highlights of the documents, but I'm not going to read through them. So if you have questions, please feel free to ask at any time. I'm going to start with, you should have one, it's called the legislative budget process. It has different colors. It looks like a flow chart. And it's a bit of a timeline. So this walks through the budget process as it progresses throughout the legislative session. Starting in September, the agencies present their budget submissions to the Division of Budget, the governor, and that's already occurred. And then the next step is for the governor to make her recommendations, which we just had this week. The governor's recommendation serves as the starting point of the budget. The governor does not appropriate money, that's the legislature's job, but the governor provides a recommendation that begins as kind of the blueprint for the budget. And then the legislature goes from that budget and makes any changes it feels necessary. And then that becomes the money that will be appropriated in the budget. Also throughout, there is another document I believe you received. It's called KLRD Budget Publication Descriptions. Throughout the year, KLRD puts out quite a few different documents, and many of them can be quite confusing. They all serve a very specific purpose for a very specific time. And so this document outlines the different documents, so I'll refer to it every now and then, but it might be nice to have throughout the year to help understand as you get new documents or see new documents posted, what it is that they're describing. So in February, budget hearings begin. The budgets are divided amongst committees. So in the House, they're divided amongst budget committees. In the Senate, it's a little bit different. There are some committees subcommittees that hear budgets, but there are also some policy committees that hear budgets. The budget is really, the process is 4 parts. First, the KLRD analyst will present our budget analysis. We work with the agencies and the Division of Budget to really get a really in-depth understanding of the budget, the changes that are in there, how they impact the agency moving forward. And we work with them to really gain that understanding so that we can provide that to you in a nonpartisan, impartial way. So the KLRD analysts will provide information, and the agencies have a chance to present. So they'll come in and present to the committee. And that's often followed by public comment. Some agencies will have public comment, others won't. KDADS, KDHE, DCF will often have groups that come in and want to provide some information about how the budget impacts their program and possibly provide suggestions for the legislature to act on. So the committee's role in this is to create recommendations for the budget. So like I said, you'll start with the governor's budget, and then you can provide any recommendations. That can be adding money to a particular program. It can be deleting money. It can be adding provisos, which is adding language for an agency to take certain action. And you can also just make notes about what you would like to see the agency do. Or sometimes, there have been some times where a committee will commend an agency for a job well done in a specific area. So similar to when a bill is amended, one committee member in social service budget will make a motion to make a recommendation for that budget. A second is needed, and then the committee will vote on each recommendation. So then there's a final motion to pass out the budget, which includes all the recommendations that the committee had then had brought up and passed. And then the KLRD document that you'll see following this is called our subcommittee report. So we're always in the room listening, and the KLRD staff member who is paired with that budget will be writing down the recommendations. Our job is to track those recommendations throughout this entire process. So the first step in doing that is making sure that we've recorded your recommendations as you intended. So we'll record those, we'll create our subcommittee document, and we'll pass it back to you for review. And then it's important that it's reviewed and it's accurate, because the next step is report out. That generally happens in late February, early March. Report out is when Chair Carpenter will go to HAP and he'll present the budgets that have come through this committee to the House Appropriations Committee. A similar process happens on the Senate side in Senate Ways and Means. There's often a pretty tight timeline between when all this is happening. So there are some times where you'll have a budget hearing in committee. We'll have to do recommendations that day or the next, and then we'll have to get them right up to House Appropriations so that the House Appropriations Committee can hear that. Other times there's a little bit more time to think about those recommendations. So much like the Budget Committee did, House Appropriations or Senate Ways and Means, which we call HAP and SWAM, they'll adopt or delete or add recommendations to the budget, just like your committee had the ability to do. So they'll look at what your committee recommended and they can say, yes, we want to concur with everything that was recommended, or they might say, we want to make this change, or we want to add more money here or less money here, or we would like to see the agency do something different with certain funds. After the recommendations go through the House Appropriations, then it goes to the Committee of the Whole. That generally happens in March. Both the House and the Senate will hear the bills on the floor. At this time, amendments are permitted, so anyone can bring forth an amendment to amend the recommendations that are in the bill. So the next step after that is Conference Committee. Generally, during the Committee of the Whole action, Klrd will also create, that's when we get really busy and we create several documents that show the progression of each of the recommendations, that show the changes that the budgets have gone through. It's any change that's been made, it should be trackable back to whether that change is made in a subcommittee, a budget committee, or House Appropriations. So we have a lot of documents that follow those things. We also will have a bill explainer that goes out to the legislators so that you have the ability to be familiar with, on a small scale, all the budgets that you weren't able to hear in your subcommittees. There are so many budgets, but we try to put it all together in a concise document so that you are able to read through it and get a sense for each of the different agencies and the budgets that you might be interested in. So the next step is Conference Committee. In March, conference committees will meet to review the appropriations bill. This is generally 3 members of House Appropriations and Senate Ways and Means, and they'll meet and compare the 2 bills and reconcile any differences. Any agreement that they make is put into the Conference Committee report, and then we also create Conference Committee comparison reports that show the various items that that the House and the Senate were talking about and needed to come to an agreement on, and then what the end decision was. So following conference, the bill will go back to the Committee of the Whole. At this time, amendments are not permitted. So once it's been through Conference Committee, no one can, the bill is not amendable. It's a vote for, yes, we want to pass this or don't. After it is voted through both the House and the Senate, it'll be sent to the governor. The governor then has the option to execute line item vetoes. And these are vetoes that the legislature has the option to overturn at Omnibus. And then again, we have Klrd puts together documents that compare those bills as well. So when the bill is finalized and passed and gone to the governor, the next step then is Omnibus. At Omnibus, the House Appropriations and Senate Ways and Means will meet. And at this time, they're not only discussing the budgets, but also any policy bills that were passed that have a fiscal impact. So agencies will pay attention, and we will track bills throughout the session that will require agencies to spend more money. We'll bring these to the attention of House Appropriations, Senate Ways and Means, and then those groups can act as they feel appropriate. The omnibus bill process is fairly similar to the appropriations bill process. It also goes through conference. It'll be voted on the floor. And then in the end, the budget bill will be sent to the governor. Are there any questions about the timeline? You know, I covered
Committee
a lot of information.
Committee questions? Seeing none?
Okay.
You must have done a great job.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I kind of waved at you during her presentation. Are those public comments made in this room to this committee then? We will have public in here.
We will. We'll have public input, public testimony on most all of them. We usually don't have much public testimony on a lot of them, but especially KDAD's, DCF and KDHE will have a lot of public comment.
We get a bigger room?
No, but we deal with it, but there'll be folks outside the door.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure. Committee, further questions? Well, Megan, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That's kind of an overview of the budget process. It really is very abbreviated. It's not nearly, it looks good on paper, but trust me, it isn't going to be like that. And I was trying to think, the last couple of years have been very compressed because of COVID. We threw a budget together 2 years ago that just, because we closed down the legislature, so we threw that budget together very quickly, and it makes for a lot of work in a very short period of time. And then last year, we also had a compressed schedule, and on normal years, we have all of February and pretty much to do this, and last year, I think we were done by the middle of March. So I've almost forgotten what it was like to have a normal session. But what we'll get from KLRD, we'll get a schedule of when we'll have hearings on these, and it'll be coming in the next week or so. Veterans Forum of Veterans Affairs, Mortuary Arts, all of those, we'll get a schedule, and that's what we'll work off of after we get that. And then we'll have their agency testimony, and then public testimony, and then more than likely the next day we'll take committee recs. And a lot of them don't involve committee recs. They're pretty cut and dried and ask questions about their budget and stuff like that. But what? Oh yeah, then we have a date to present out to the Appropriations Committee, and that's when we take all the committee recs out of here, put them together, and then we present that to the Appropriations Committee. And then they can either approve them or not. And then we go to war.
We have to defend, when we give that budget, we have to defend why we made the recommendations we did and answer any questions that the full committee has about it. And sometimes if it's money, it's pushed off into Omnibus and whatever, but then most of the time we've been lucky. They approve what we want because I think we're pretty prepared and we can answer their questions and why we're doing what we're doing along those lines.
Any further questions? Well, I apologize for keeping you all here for just a few minutes on a Thursday afternoon when you could be home, but little did I know how the week was going to flesh out when we do this budget a week in advance. So here we are, and we will not have meetings on Monday. We will meet Tuesday evening. You probably already have the agenda. And with that, have a safe weekend. Enjoy the snow if we get it, and the cold weather and all that good stuff. But it should be melted off by the time you need to come back on Monday evening or anything. So with that, we're adjourned.